Welcome to Techforce Africa, where we explore some of the most pressing and important issues affecting technology businesses in Africa. Now, for this week, we are catching up with Pryce, who is the head of Salesforce over at Standard Bank, which is a client-centric, digitally enabled, integrated financial services organization. Now, Standard Bank actually operates across 3 core business lines, including personal and business banking, and actually serves more than 13 million customers in 27 markets. Now, Neil, greetings to you. How are you today?
Greetings to you.
Now, before we actually get into the questions and engaging about how Standard Bank is actually going forward as a digitally enabled financial services organization, we wanted to do a bit of an icebreaker, just to get the blood flowing before the meat and potatoes of today's discussion. So very quickly, NFC payment or cash?
NFC payment.
Okay. Call or text?
Text.
Silver or gold?
Gold.
Vision or mission?
Interesting. Vision.
Vision. Crypto or not crypto?
Wow, after the FTX collapse. It's a difficult one.
Yeah.
Crypto.
Crypto. Okay. And then leader or manager?
Leader.
Okay. So getting into, things for today, there's a lot that actually happens because Standard Bank actually has, they enjoy a brilliant reputations, and they've actually worked very hard to achieve this. We spoke just now just how big, the spread of that, operation has actually been. And, for the benefit of people out there, Brand Finance Global Brand Equity Monitor has actually said that Standard Bank's reputation has actually been going up, steadily for a number of years. How have you guys actually managed to achieve that?
Well, I think a lot begins with the client centricity, and if you design your client proposition and your business proposition to suit clients, then I think you're going to appeal to a broader segment of the market. And led by Sim Chabalala, our CEO, he's been very deliberate about wanting a platform strategy, and so there's been a lot of focus on digitization and digital enablement of the bank, which I think, supports enhanced customer service.
Yeah. And when it comes to something like that, because at the moment we hear the words digital, we hear the words technology and transformation all the time. They've sort of become, buzzwords, as some people would say. And everyone at the moment is looking to invest in that space in one way or another. What's the advice then for financial services institutions that want to have an edge or to differentiate themselves somehow in the market?
So Standard Bank's got a concept of truly human and truly digital. And some of the fintech startups go for a truly digital approach. And I think that works well. People can self-service and look after themselves. But I think intrinsically, certainly with your money, you want to, at some point, speak to a human. And so what we do is offer both. So people can self-service digitally, or they can engage with a banker, and the banker will then be supported by digital tools, which are very similar to what we offer to the client.
And when it comes to something like that, as you said, there's different channels, right? You mentioned the online one, and you've mentioned, people wanting to have a conversation with an actual person,
Yes.
in that banking interaction. And people as customers, they're constantly blasted with messages from the different channels. How do you decide when exactly to use a specific type of channel? When is the right time for you to use either channel?
Now, that is a fascinating conversation. So I think, ideally, when you engage a new customer, you need to take stock of all their needs and then sort of solution them holistically. But subsequent to that, life happens and moments happen. You might have a kid, you might, get a salary increase, want a new car.
Yeah.
And so what the job of the clever data scientist is to accumulate all this information about you, everything that's available, and then try and figure out what's the best channel and the best timing and the best context to communicate to you. And so that's, for example, we use Salesforce, and Salesforce has a marketing cloud, and we can communicate with people through paid social media, through push notifications, through email, through SMS. And there's obviously some clever machine learning and intelligence that decides what's the appropriate channel to communicate to that customer, what's the appropriate content of the message, and then also, what is the next best action or offer we should give to you at that moment in your life. And the technology is so advanced, we can actually do that real time. So you could be surfing a website looking at a car that you want to purchase, and then when you log onto the Standard Bank website, we can actually then surface a banner which is about vehicle finance in real time.
Yeah. And the real-time capability that you're talking about, speaks to having a lot of infrastructure, in place,
Sure.
Because the systems don't just talk or find the data. There's an onboarding process that happens. You have to decide, which products you're going to have on the platforms. So I think that raises two related questions, right? The first one is there an actual broader vision around how you guys are actually going to make the most use of all of these different tools? The capabilities there, but does that fit into a broader vision? And then secondly, how do you then onboard all of the different products onto the platform?
Salesforce is a key platform partner of Standard Bank. And in the Salesforce suite, there's a whole lot of products. One is the marketing cloud, like I just mentioned, where you can digitally market to people. Yeah. Then there's a sales or CRM component, which underpins, the bankers, the humans that speak to customers. And then there's a whole onboarding piece, which I'll come back to. And then the last piece of this macro distribution, if you think about marketing, sales, onboarding, is service. Yeah. And so there's another component which Salesforce helps with, is the service. So all our call centers use Salesforce. Yeah. And if you call in, or if you live chat or WhatsApp, it all goes onto a case, and there's knowledge management, which is surfaced to the agent to help them resolve that case as quickly as possible. But I think what you're talking about is this onboarding piece in the middle. Yeah. And so what you really want to do as a bank is take your full portfolio of products and make sure that you can onboard yourself digitally with all those products. Yeah. And then we do that needs analysis, which I said, when we speak to you as an individual, figure out what do you need. It's not just if you have a small business, it's not just a bank account. You need a credit card machine, you might need some finance. If you're an individual, might be home finance or vehicle finance in addition to, a credit card. Yeah. And so what you want to do is obviously ask the minimum amount of information, because we can get a lot of information electronically. We access Department of Home Affairs, so we actually don't even have to ask you for your ID. And then the information we need, we should just ask it once for the full portfolio of products, and then digitally onboard you with the full suite of products that's relevant to your individual circumstances. And thereafter comes into that personalization. Like I said, then as you have moments in life, we need to be, we need to know what you need almost before you know that you need it, and say, well, how about this next product, or how about tweaking your portfolio of financial products?
Okay, it's good to know, that there's all of this happening in the background, because I think a lot of people, whether you're a consumer or business, there's always, a lot of tension sometimes. And I know back in the day that was an issue to say, why fill out the same, set of forms, sure, or provide the same, information and, documentation every single time something needs to happen. And I guess for an organization such as yourselves, moving yourselves from, that point to where we are now, where you're able to do, one set of, documents, whatever, and then that, okay, we've done it once, and the person, we've reduced that amount of friction. That's innovation, right? So sure, the question is about what does innovation look like, at Standard Bank? There's a lot of tools, that are there, but, when it comes to actual innovation, it's about how do you actually use them. So for you guys at Standard Bank, what does innovation look like?
Just carrying on from one of your earlier points, I think innovation's maybe got different layers. The first thing is doing the obvious basics right. Like we were saying, filling in multiple forms for different products and giving the same information is just clearly not innovative. Yeah. And so I think, I think it begins with understanding your customers' needs and their journeys. If you look at Uber, for example, they just figured out that the real need of the customer was to get from A to B. It wasn't that they had to own a car, it just needed that they need to get from A to B. And so I think the more we truly understand our customer, the better we can design products that support their lives and support their businesses. To give you an example, if you run a small business, you probably have an accounting package. Let's say you have Xero. It makes your life a lot easier if we can send those bank statements right into your accounting package. You don't have to go to your bank statement website, download it, upload it, just go straight in.
Yeah.
But I think you can then sort of take that even further. Now, for example, instead of giving the bank financial statements, we can just access those financial statements directly from your accounting package.
Yeah.
And maybe we don't even need your financial statements. We can just look at your cash flow history and then figure out, about how we can lend to you, what your risk rating is. And so, for example, we do have a product where, if you need, for example, 100,000 Rand, we might say, right, it's 110,000 Rand, and we'll just take a percent of your revenue every day, and the bank is then taking the risk as to how long it's going to be before you repay that loan. And I think all these things have been developed through just understanding what would be the maximum benefit for the customer, and then reverse engineering to the technology.
So with everything that you guys are, doing in terms of the investment in the technology, all the innovation that you've just spoken about, just now, how you're trying to simplify, a lot of processes, slim it down, reduce the friction and all of that. How do you then decide or, make it a reality about how to actually connect, with the customer in a way that actually suits them?
Sure.
Because we spoke just now about, the online versus, in-person dynamic, but, actually connecting on a way that suits them. How do you do that, firstly, and how has that actually helped to grow Standard Bank's business?
Sure. I think it's important that you obviously allow customers to interact in the channels of their choice. You're right. Of course, there's the human side where you can go into a branch or you can speak to your banker. Look, I think it's table stakes for any bank or any fintech to have, a website, to have it available on all the mobile phones, iOS, Android, Huawei. But then I think there's a lot of other channels which people like to communicate with. WhatsApp, for example, is a growing channel, live chat. Across the African continent, SMS and USSD is still a very popular channel.
Yeah.
And I think, it also extends broader than that. Sometimes you might not realize you're dealing with a bank because you might be in some other channel. So one we're all familiar with is when we go and buy a car. When you go into the dealership, that dealer uses the dealer system to help you purchase the car.
Yeah.
But behind the scenes, it's actually calling APIs or connectivity to the bank. And so, for example, our vehicle and asset finance system is headless. It can talk to dealer systems via API.
Yeah.
And I think increasingly you find loan options when you go to a retail outlet, and if you can't pay immediately, they say, right, pay over 6 months or something. And so a lot of that is actually funded, in the back by banks.
Yeah.
So I think increasingly, and this is part of the platform strategy, which, our CEO outlined, is that, we want to allow our competitors' products onto our platform, but we will also take our products to other platforms. For the example I gave was the car dealership.
And I like that example because I think it exemplifies, something that I always enjoy, seeing in action, because they often say that the best technology is the technology that you don't actually see. It just works, in the background. And I guess at this point, we want to maybe switch over, to that other side, because we've spoken a lot about how you guys are interfacing with customers. But on the other side of that is the Standard Bank, staff who have to engage, with the customers. And it's one thing to have an enhanced UI that actually shows this whole customer journey that you've been, talking about throughout this discussion. But it's quite something else, to actually see it. What's that other side looking like at the moment? What type of tools, do your staff, relationship managers and the like actually stay on the front foot or actually have, access to the right information when they are in meetings with the clients?
It's absolutely critical to us that the staff experience is excellent, and we send out surveys and we rate it. As I was mentioning, we use Salesforce, which is a number of products in the suite, and one of the things that they have is a Lightning Web component. So things we build, components that we build for customers, we try and use exactly the mirror component for staff.
Yeah.
So then you've got the choice, either the customer can self-service or your banker or someone in the call center can do it on your behalf. But in addition to that, we obviously want to equip our bankers with as much useful information about the customer. So another tool that Salesforce gives us is this Customer 360,
yeah.
where we can understand all the products that you have. And they've also got these moments or these events. And so we can see, you were graduated, just so we understand your context and we can better solution you. And I mean, if you look, we have some quite intelligent client plans, where we try and really understand the business and then how our products can assist with whatever the objectives are of the business or an individual. So we definitely endeavor. I mean, another example that comes to mind is in the call centers. So with the new technology, we record the calls coming in. We can transcribe those calls into text in real time. And actually, as you're talking about a product, remember I said we've got that knowledge repository of these articles.
Yeah.
So as you're talking, we can be providing the call center agent with articles that are relevant to the conversation.
Yeah.
And then obviously at the beginning of the call with the caller line identification, we could have identified you, so we go straight in without having to ask you your name. Yeah. And actually, if, on this transcribing, we can also check the sentiment of the call.
Okay.
And so if the call's going badly, a supervisor can actually listen into the call and then whisper to the agent to say, I think you need to do this, or barge in and take over the call. So I think there's a lot of technology that's available these days to support staff and providing an excellent customer service.
And I want to drill down, on that particular aspect of the type of information that is available to your staff when they're interfacing, because it's one thing to be dealing with, let's say, your one customer, if you're a relationship manager, for example, but as an organization, right?
Sure.
We spoke about the millions. I think it's 13 million, customers and counting, and we're talking 27 countries, right? Those are big numbers, right?
Yes.
So how are the dashboards and all of these different interfaces actually helping you guys at least understand or see your customer base?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, that's the real beauty about Salesforce, is that it's a platform. So we have Salesforce across every country, across every segment. Like you were mentioning, across consumer and high net worth, business and commercial, corporate investment banking, and then obviously we have Liberty, so it's insurance and asset management as well. Yeah. Salesforce, wall to wall across everything. And so every customer has an account on Salesforce with the information that I mentioned. We can see their customer 360, all their accounts and whatever information we have on them. But then I think coming to dashboards, that's another real strength. And so we can see, the managers can run their call centers or their sales teams, and they can see everything. They can see their customer churn, the acquisition of customers, if customers are leaving us, we can see that too. We can see all the interactions. So every interaction with a customer is recorded.
Yeah.
We've got the client plans, as I mentioned, and then we've also got the pipeline. So as there's an opportunity, so if you're talking to the bank about a home loan, we track that right through to conclusion or closed one.
Yeah.
And then we can even see the revenue and margin and return on capital we make. And so we have these beautiful dashboards, where managers can see. And then if you're managing, there's dashboards for, depending on the circumstance, so when we're looking at a call center, we can see the average wait time. We can see whether the call was resolved in the first time, which is important. We can see turnaround times. We can see customer satisfaction. So I think it's critical if you're running a business that you've got all that analytical information to manage the business and make corrections real time.
It really sounds like the technology is enabling a lot of the ability, to make people's jobs easier. And, you guys are using that data that comes from all of the different touch points to help to improve, some of those processes. Now, one of the other big numbers, that is in the universe of Standard Bank is 52,000, right? And that's your employee count. And up until this point, we've spoken about, how you guys are interfacing with customers, and also how your staff are interfacing with customers. But purely on the staff side, right? How do these dashboards actually help you guys engage with your employees? Can you talk to us about that relationship between Standard Bank, the technology, and your employees?
Actually, one of the things we're using Salesforce is to build a HR portal for our staff, where they can come and do all their functions. But in there is also a whole lot of training, and trail mixes. And we have surveys. So, there is an endeavor, I think, to your point, to use technology to make our staff's lives a lot easier. One initiative which we're kind of proud of is Salesforce has gamified their learning. So Salesforce has this learning platform called Trailhead, and they've got a whole lot of free learning, which is available to anyone. And once you get to 50,000 points, you become a ranger. And so we actually have 25,000 rangers. So to your point, 1 in every 2 employee has done a lot of training on Salesforce. And so they're very familiar with it. And that helps them use the tool most effectively because they've got such a great base of knowledge and understanding on how to use the tool. I hope I answered the question.
No, most certainly. And I think that helps us to what you call this, get to the close of today's discussion, sort of wrapping everything up. As I said at the beginning, customers, then staff and customers, and then staff. But now coming back to purely the customers, what are the plans for Standard Bank when it comes to customer experience, customer engagement over the next 12 months?
Well, I think we're going to carry on with more of what we discussed. So I think, designers and the UI and the UX, to use the term, is super important. And I think we have to, as you say, figure out those customer journeys, make them, delight the customer and make them, excited. And they have to be hyper-personalized. We can't just give a generic campaign to everyone. We actually need to figure out what's appropriate for you. And I think the nice thing about technology, given the availability of data and the clever data scientists and all the algorithms and machine learning we can do a very good job at hopefully giving you a delightful experience that's personalized to the individual, to the business.
No, most certainly. It sounds like Standard Bank has really done a lot, to try and simplify the way that the organization works. And it's really great to see that you have technology such as Salesforce that's actually helping, to enable all of those different processes on the customer side, on the employee side, and especially given the fact that you're able to use all of your different investments across the board.
Sure.
Neil, it really sounds like a great place for us to end today's discussion. Great to see a lot of the work that Standard Bank is doing to implement this technology using tools like Salesforce to be able to make better the experience on the customer side, on the employee side, but also how the group as Standard Bank is actually integrating, with these 2 particular groups. So thank you so much, for being with us for today. But before we do let you go, right, there is one more question that we wanted to, pose to you. This is outside of, this discussion, but for you, right, the best or worst business advice that you've ever had?
I have a friend, he was really battling at this company. They were changing and he was getting frustrated. And his father said to him, grit it out, because with change comes opportunity. And so I think I sometimes, if I'm getting a bit frustrated at my current employer and there's lots of changes, I just remember that piece of advice. Yeah. And I think in terms of, bad advice, well, my father was a veterinary surgeon, so he wasn't business aware or business savvy. Yeah. The best he could do is say become an accountant, because I guess that was the best advice. Yeah. Whereas I see some of my other friends had parents who were actually high up in business and could mentor them. And then when I lived in the US, I found a mentor. I think that's how you can compensate if you can't get that mentorship from home. I think I'd give people advice to find a good mentor.
Okay.
That would be
that would be your
my two bits of advice, exactly.
All right, cool. So it's been a really great discussion. Thank you so much. We were talking to Neil Pryce, who is the head of Salesforce over at Standard Bank. I think there were 3 top things that actually came out of this discussion. The first one being about how to use technology and how Standard Bank has actually gone about reducing some of the friction points, in the banking process for customers. And then secondly, looking at how Standard Bank is actually making use of a unified view of the customer, that customer journey, and then giving that information to different parts of their business so that those interactions can be richer, whether it's a relationship manager, whether you're talking about what's happening in the call centers. Really great from that point of view. And then thirdly, how they are making use of Salesforce technology as a way to interact with the customers, the employees, and as a group for their different functions. We heard about an HR system that's going to be coming out. So really great discussion, and we look forward to having you on the next one. So that brings us to the end of this edition of Techforce Africa, where we explore issues affecting technology businesses in Africa.